It's hard to know where to start when dissecting such a crushing loss like the Dolphins' 30-17 defeat to the Packers. There's frustration, disappointment, and a lot of soul-searching that needs to happen for this team. But let's face it, the performance spoke for itself, and it wasn't what fans or players wanted to see. The missed tackles were a glaring issue. 20. That's how many tackles Miami let slip through their fingers, according to NFL Next Gen Stats. That wasn't just a stat, it was the story of the game. Those 20 missed tackles allowed Green Bay to rack up an extra 132 yards. Linebacker Jordan Brooks didn't hold back when talking about it. He called it out bluntly, "I thought we were soft." You don't hear that kind of honesty often, but there it was, raw and unfiltered. He questioned whether the frigid mid-20-degree temperatures got into the players' heads, affecting their physicality and mindset. The elements played a part, he said. And honestly, after watching that game, it's hard to argue otherwise. The cold wasn't just an excuse, it was part of the reality. The Dolphins had been solid against the run for 5 straight games, holding opponents under 100 rushing yards. But on Thursday, Green Bay gashed them for 108 rushing yards in the first half alone. Add to that the fact that the Packers averaged over 7 yards per play, and you can see how Miami found itself in such a deep hole. Let's not forget this, for the first time since Week 8, the Dolphins failed to force a turnover. A defense that prides itself on being opportunistic simply didn't deliver when it mattered. Calais Campbell, a veteran presence on the defensive line, didn't mince words either. When he heard about those 20 missed tackles, you could almost feel his frustration through the screen. That's the game right there, man. 20 missed tackles, it's hard to win. He described the day as one where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Sure, he avoided outright excuses, but he pointed to moments where the team had chances to make critical plays and just didn't come through. That's what stings the most for fans, knowing the opportunities were there but weren't seized. The game started with a hint of promise. Miami forced a 3-and-out on Green Bay's opening drive, a good defensive stand. But then rookie Malik Washington muffed the punt, setting the Packers up just 7 yards from the end zone. 3 plays later, Jordan Love hit Jaden Reed for a touchdown. That sequence hurt. Campbell admitted it's tough to bounce back from those kinds of mistakes, but he also held the defense accountable for not limiting the damage to a field goal. Moments like that are pivotal, and Miami came up short. Offensively, it wasn't much better. The Dolphins were abysmal on 3rd down, converting just 4 of 14 attempts. Red zone struggles? Those were there, too. They scored touchdowns on only half of their trips inside Green Bay's 20-yard line. One sequence in particular was gut-wrenching to watch. 2nd and goal from the 1-yard line, and they couldn't punch it in. 4 plays later, the ball was back in the Packers' hands. Head coach Mike McDaniel didn't shy away from taking responsibility for the failure on those plays. He pointed to technical errors on 1st and 2nd down but took the blame for the 3rd down incompletion and the sack on 4th down. It was a collection of things over a 4-play span, McDaniel said. Tough for us to swallow when we watch the film. The loss puts Miami 2 games behind Denver for the final playoff spot in the AFC. With only 5 games left, the margin for error is razor-thin. Winning out feels like the only real path forward if this team wants any shot at making the playoffs for the 3rd straight year. Quarterback Tua Tagovailoa tried to stay optimistic, refusing to say the dream is dead, but let's be real, it's an uphill battle now. Even Campbell acknowledged that they'll probably need help from other teams to get in. McDaniel tried to keep things in perspective, reminding everyone that the team has overcome adversity before. I told them, 5 to 7 pales in comparison to 2 to 6, he said, referring to the rough start Miami endured earlier in the season. We positioned ourselves to withstand a 1-game setback. But frustration seeped through his words as he admitted it's tough to swallow a loss when you know you were capable of winning but beat yourself instead. One particularly disappointing aspect of the loss was how it perpetuated the narrative that Miami can't handle cold weather. The Dolphins have now lost 7 straight games when the temperature at kickoff is below freezing. That's not just a coincidence, it's a trend. This was supposed to be the game where Miami flipped the script, where they proved they could handle the elements. Instead, it only reinforced the doubts. Looking ahead, the Dolphins will have some reprieve from the cold in 3 of their remaining 5 games. 2 are at home, and 1 is in Houston's climate-controlled NRG Stadium. But those final 2 games? Road trips to Cleveland and New York, both likely to feature frigid temperatures. If Miami wants to be taken seriously, they'll need to rise to the occasion in those games. McDaniel expressed confidence that the team can overcome this obstacle. Eventually, you have to overcome it if you're trying to do anything in this league, he said. He believes his players know they're capable of succeeding in the cold and will be ready to prove it when the time comes. But belief is one thing, execution is another.